I've always drawn and painted and made things. We didn't have television when I was a kid, so that was what we were kind of always encouraged to do with, egg cartons and toilet rolls. We actually had this big roll of paper that my dad would just roll out, and that was like the most exciting thing to my brother and I, and we'd just go to town with different, adventures and, little, racing tracks for our cars or cities for the Lego blocks. We kind of entertained ourselves for hours with that. Who needed television? I did art at school, through high school, and I went to a pretty conservative school, so it was discouraged as a career. And I went off and did psychology for a year and a science degree, and I just didn't like it and put a folio together and applied for RMIT. So it kind of started from there, but it's not like a straight trajectory from then till now. I worked in curating for quite a few years. I worked at the National Gallery of Victoria and Gertrude Contemporary, worked at the Melbourne Biennial, done my own independent projects. I lived in LA for a while. And I'd seen, whilst I'd been living in LA, some really interesting painters such as Julie Mehetru and Laura Owens that were taking the language of painting, deconstructing it, and then re-envisaging it and making it their own. They were using different materials, different techniques, and collage was kind of a big aspect of that, where they're not necessarily literal collages in a bit of paper on another bit of paper, but collaging techniques of painting. I was doing lots of stenciling in my work and airbrush, and I was looking at like these artificial gardens in Vegas casinos and doing my stenciling around that. And then I did a trip to Central Australia, the McDonnell Ranges, and I was really struck with the sedimentary layers of rock. And that's really kind of how it evolved. And it's had quite a few incarnations over the last 10 years to get the technique right and the materials right, and this to work with that, and it all to be, a solid object. It was really seeing in that paint the potential for that to mimic things in the natural world. And I also kind of really liked, watching as the paint dried, that it could look like an avalanche or a landslide or the movement of little amoeba in a petri dish. And then that started to kind of bring about these ideas of chaos theory and the kind of macro-micro relationships in the universe. That kind of really developed and informed more of the content of the work as it continued. My process is also a philosophical approach of, kind of order and chaos, of letting go and reining it in, of creation and destruction, and the cycles of that exist in living. It's that push and pull when they talk about paint and that moment that it's going to come together. Years ago, I did a residency in Iceland, and that landscape there really informed my work for a very long time. And I feel like it's still kind of filtering through at the moment, but now I'm moving back into more a psychological space with my work. The last work I did for London was kind of like dreamscapes. I feel like I'm always drawn to what you might call a very primal landscape. Iceland is new land, it's being formed, so it could be what the earth looked like millions and millions of years ago. And then you go to Central Australia, and that's, really old land that's in the bottom of an ocean that's been worn down over years and years. So I like these places that really talk of time and kind of resonate in this very basic primal space in the human psyche. I work in bodies of work. So if you look at all my exhibitions, each of them has an idea or a theme I'm exploring. Like my show for Hong Kong last year, it was all on different words for valleys, dales, and whatever. So there was kind of a concurrent thing going on. And then the other one I did for Healy was based on this mission to Mars that they want to do. So it was this imagined, because they want to seed the atmosphere of Mars so that in 10,000 years it's habitable by big populations of humans. And so I imagined this landscape there. So I'm always kind of, there's always a story and a theme with each exhibition and body of work. The other aspect is my work engaging with climate change or pollution or this kind of thing? And I think, there is a certain amount of a deliberate kind of toxicity or something pushing it within my work. But ultimately, I'm thinking about more ideas of connectedness with nature than exploring our ambivalent relationship of destruction with it, but that ultimately, just as, people might engage with that primal image of the valley, when we're in nature, we're connected in a way that is intrinsic to being a human being. They can stop the temperature rising by injecting clouds of sulfur into the air, but then you'll never see a blue sky again. Now, does it matter that we'll ever see a blue sky again? It's, humanity will survive, but in what way? And how important is that everyday connection with nature, with wilderness, to know it's there for our own sense of wholeness?